meetings from Idaho and Utah on a semi-annual basis, I would set up, I would just ask Dee, send me a big display. So they would send me a big display of my face, which was awesome. And I would set up a table, and I was a vendor, and I was just a vendor for HODs. So I've done this for the last couple of years, and I couldn't make the last one because I was sitting for the ECS boards. And I'm like, Deanie, I've set this up, you gotta go. And it was probably the worst attended.
But you know, we had fun. We met, Costa and I met some amazing people. We met this lady that her husband developed this bicycle thing. What was it? She had a stroke and her husband developed this like 4-wheeler bicycle. Yeah. Anyway, we had fun.
Yeah, so all I did really was just go down and represent HODs and do ultrasound and EMG on people in between the meetings, just like any other vendor would do, or what you see these guys do at like PPS, right? And people would come by and they would be like, what, you're doing this in Idaho, you're doing this in Pocatello, can I ask you a little bit more about this? And hey, I've got this, I may have gotten in trouble at one point because I had a PT that was like, man, I have had this chronic hamstring, I think something going on that everybody has tried to treat for the last 2 years, and I have had to stop doing marathons since then. I'm like, well, let's look at an ultrasound here. Yeah, I've got a partial pterygial tuberosity, and she has some short sons. We can get to that. So, and everybody's kind of looking, and like the whole, everything is starting again. Like their courses are all starting in these big conference rooms. We're like right outside there on this treatment table, and I've got like 25, 30 people staying. And I'm like, yeah, does anybody have a needle? We should needle this right now. And so somebody came up with a magic needle. 20 people, 30 people stayed for the next hour. I think I upset whoever was next presenter. But it was just very interesting because then everybody stays around, asks questions, and I'm like, yeah, you can learn this. You just have to come up and work for me. But it was really interesting because I would come home with like 20, 30, 40 names of the people that are interested. So I've stopped recruiting for PT because if I recruit for diagnostics, then I'm going to find a PT that is interested in the game that we play. So anyway, that's good. Highly recommended. The other thing that we do just as a kind of a practical application is I try to teach at Idaho State University as much as I can on ultrasound and EMG. Sometimes it is for the PTA group, sometimes it's for the PT. During COVID, one of my associates and I, Andy Good, taught a 3-hour introductory course on ultrasound over Zoom. Not quite as fun as it would have been otherwise to be there in person, but I'm sure we'll be connected up for that again. And the hope is that we just know there's about 3 major PT programs in our footprint that we kind of draw from. Our hope is that we can get to know in the next few years in a more purposeful recruiting method through diagnostics that we can get to know all of the students and get a bio on each one of them and have an application for each one of them and then start to choose them as we kind of weed through as they get closer towards graduation if we need a new grad. But that's really not our total objective. That's kind of the backup. Hopefully by being at the association meetings, those types of things, that we are capturing people that are, oh, I've already got an OCS, I've already got this, and man, I do need the next challenging thing in my life that is going to help me to grow as a professional. And hopefully those are actually the people that we're truly capturing rather than just the new grad. So that's some of our objectives.
What do you teach? When you do like an intro, what do you typically do?
So when I for a course,
it's like at the university.
At the university. So really, I called up Mohini and I said, if you were doing this, what would you do? And she was like, well, I'd probably do a shortened version of physics, but I would just kind of get into kind of module 2A, depending on, I don't know, we still call it 2A. Anyway, and so we cut out a lot of the slides on physics, but just used a kind of a boiled down version so they would understand what we were doing. And then we focused on like shoulder and knee because we figured they would understand that anatomy the best.
Bart, Jimmy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Vicky has done some presentations as
Yeah,
well.
let me
Canada,
mention that.
resource if this is something we want to do.
With it,
Vicky Buchanan has put together an ultrasound presentation for presenting it in colleges, we put it together with Mahini. So that is available. And I do have I've created two different presentations on electromyography for colleges. One is a shorter version, and the second one is a 6 to 8 hour version presentation. Because whenever I teach at Springfield College, it's a full day or it's an 8 hour course. So if we can make these available inside FranchiseSoft, let's get somebody write this down as a task, and we can make them available inside FranchiseSoft so you guys can go and have access to them. A couple of
Well, that's what Guillermo's on the other side.
do you get paid for that? I mean, do you charge the college for the hour that you were?
It depends. I mean, it depends what's your arrangement. If you are, let's say, an associate faculty of the college, then you get paid, yeah. But you know, I mean, colleges, they pay you, I mean, it's literally the amount of money they pay me when I do that is for the trip there. It's like peanuts, but you do it because you want to help. You get the word out, you help the profession, and you do have opportunities for recruitment. I mean, you know, I distribute my business card at the end and all that. But here is, in addition to what Bart said, a couple of comments on that. You guys know that, and some of you are using it, HADS has made a deal with paychecks. If you use them for your HR, payroll services, you get a 25% discount. Now, what they are including inside that platform is free advertisement on Indeed. And I have to tell you, the amount of money we used to pay on Indeed every month, it pays off and then some what we pay paychecks for the full HR service. It's included. So we have constantly opened advertisements for positions on Indeed. We never turn them off, or sometimes we turn them off because they get to be a little annoying because we have so many applicants, and then we turn them back on. So right now in our PT, and we have two separate ones. We have, let's say, an advertisement for a PT or PT business. And then when it comes to diagnostics, the advertisement is different. It is only about diagnostics. Then the PT can be added, let's say, as an add-on thing there in the conversation. But we want to get those people who are interested for diagnostics. So I'll tell you, I can check it right now, but I think the last count, we have like 130 something applicants, PTs interested only for diagnostics. And because, you know, we're not recruiting now, I think we'll start get hire a couple of more people. So we'll have to do more interviews. But you know, people who apply in that area, some of them, they have very high interest. So they somehow try to figure out our personal emails, and we find sometimes emails from these people to our personal emails saying, oh yeah, we applied for the position, what's going on, can you please take a look at our application? So there is very high interest in people.
Can you share what they had? Oh, is that? Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you have a template.
Yeah, we can post that too. Yeah, we can definitely post that too. I mean, it's gonna take me a little time now to get it
We
here.
have opportunities available on our website where you go to where we're all listed. Could there be
That's awesome. Why don't we put that on the EMG Test Near Me website? Because we do have there something that says if you're a physical therapist interested to join our network, maybe we can have something for recruitment purposes or talent acquisition purposes. Are you a talent that you want to be acquired? Yes.
So one of the things that Will and I did that was a really successful action was we never stopped advertising for physical therapists. Even if there wasn't an opening per se, right? We were always acquiring resumes or talent, whatever you want to call it. So there was, and honestly, with the idea being, we especially did it for the high turnover positions. So that's not just for physical therapy. We were always looking for rock stars. And there's typically some turnover that can always happen. And if you didn't take advantage of the pandemic to do some really good turnover, then you might have missed an opportunity. But we never stopped advertising for physical therapists as well. There was always an ad out for physical therapists. We were always interviewing. We were always looking for the next best physical therapist, yeah.
Yeah, and I want to add to the college piece because our most successful action was targeting who our avatar was in their first year of PT school. So like one of the things that we always did is we found the rhythm with the local schools. There was 3 that we were able to get into. And so regardless of whatever we did, we didn't have diagnostics for the early stages of our recruiting success. So it was really about being early in those young men and women's minds regarding like that we're here to serve you. And we were looking early on for those A players who were just high value and high work ethic. And to answer your question, team, that ultimately that's the best personality type. I mean, you can go into more detail with like attention to detail, which is important in a job ad. You want to list the characteristics so that when the right person reads it, they go, oh, that's me. But it's someone who really cares about, like, I always look at like the entrepreneurial mindset in those school age kids. And so what I would do, remember, just like with what Janine was talking about yesterday, there's always a call to action. We struggle with that in the industry so much, healthcare in general, but PT specifically, that we really struggle with this word called sales, and not this group so much, but you understand what I'm saying. It applies to talent acquisition. Whenever action we do, there's a call to action that is a legitimate service to them. So here were some of the calls of action that I would do. The most successful one was, so I would present usually on business type topics, like how to land your dream job. I'd go do a 30-minute presentation talking about my experience as an owner, and all of you can speak powerfully into that. And at the end of that, I'd say, listen, I'm here to serve you guys. I want you to be like highly skilled when you get to your interview stage. So if you'd like, I have 20 spots available for me to meet tomorrow for job interviews. I will give you a real job interview. I'll give you feedback on your strengths and your weaknesses. And so it was so funny because I'd get all those slots filled and I'm interviewing all these people. And it wasn't just first years, but first, second, and third years. But if you can get a rock star first year to interview them, then you've got someone in 2 years who's like, that's all they thought about for 2 years is working for you in your company. Like it takes a lot to like throw that off. So there's a bit of a lag time to build that bench. But if we start today, we're only the most 2 years out of having this endless supply that never runs out of great people. And you just keep showing up and the professors are appreciative because you're creating value. So I love Bart and Deanie's input around having it be diagnostic focused. I think that would be a powerful combination to combine those ideas of like showing up and teaching the diagnostic piece. And if anyone wants to interview with me, I can give you feedback. It's like, this is what you did well, this is what you could do better on, that kind of thing.
One more thing I want to add on this is you have to also think a little bit, the therapist you're hiring to be involved in diagnostics. Do you want them only to do diagnostics within your office, or you want them to be involved in outside business? So willingness to travel in that case, and the means to travel is important. If you live somewhere where there is no transportation, and you are making deals with, let's say, physicians, other healthcare providers in distance of 5, 10, 15 miles around, or whatever distance, depending on what your territory is, then you want them to be willing and able to travel. They have a car or something, you know. So that would be important also.
Team, did we answer your question fully? Do you feel satisfied? I just want to make sure.
And there is also under the training, under one of the training of the HUTS training manuals, I can't pinpoint right now where it is. It says it's something, there's a document called the ideal diagnostic physical therapist or something like that. And it lists some of the characteristics there. I mean, we can search for that, James, it would be great.
A bunch online, a lot of interaction here. It's great.
Good.
So a few questions targeted to things you said a little bit earlier. One was, I guess, question for Bard, the story where you were presenting at your association second meeting, and that when you do something like that, what is your recruitment bang? Like what do you leave there with, reaches wise, and how many, and is it easy to, and how many are converting to staff?
So, yeah, we probably leave with about 25 to 30 names and emails of people. And there's more than that come in, honestly, but of the ones that I'm interested in. And then our objective, and we honestly have not been as intentional about this as we would like, is periodic follow-up with those folks and a platform to engage them on a more regular basis, because they're a little bit more spread out. Most of the ones that I picked up last time I did this was Utah, the whole state of Utah. So you really can't have them just pop in, right? And so in periodic follow-up with those people, we try to gather resumes, try to essentially follow up with email and can we introduce you to some diagnostics, or can we invite you up? We're going to have an internal training on ultrasound. We'd like you to just come up and engage with us. And that whittles down the group. Our most successful hire came like 3 steps away from this action though. Okay, so this is probably, so we did this for a little while. Someone from Rocky Mountain University, a professor down there, heard that we were doing this, saw this, came and talked to us, talked to one of their students. One of their students graduated, moved up to Boise, then took another job in Twin Falls, then called me and said, my professor 2 years ago said you guys teach and do EMG, and I would like to be hired. Can I interview? Do you have an opening? And I'm like, we don't have an opening, but for sure we'll interview. And now he's doing the residency now. So that was like a 3-year process. So as much as Will's is probably a faster turnaround on this, finding the right diagnostician and especially towards EMG for us was a lot more work, but he shows a lot of promise. So
That's awesome. No, thank you. That's great. Thank you. The next question, then there's just 2 more things. Dr. K, you may have mentioned this in what you said about the article that I'll look for, but what are certain characteristics of a PT that is better for diagnostics compared to just a general practitioner? In other words, what do you look at in a PT for diagnostics?
So let's look at that for a moment. If in a business, if in a physical therapy business, you don't want to hire a PT who is just thinking like a machine, where do a treatment, do it. You want a thinking person. You want somebody to think even more than in your in your physical therapy business. You want someone to be thinking, as I'm going to present this afternoon, okay, well, I have this patient in front of me. The patient is complaining for pain on the right side. I have to ask them something about the other side, the other related conditions, so that I can select the proper test. You want a person who's a little smart. So here is the thing. So there is different kinds of smart. There is a smart study to pass an exam, and there is a smart, like thinking person. Thinking, put the mind to solve problems somewhere, you know. So instead of being robotic in life, what can help you to achieve that, right? You should not hire someone before you test them, right? Talking about testing, we use in our practice for about a couple of years, we used the Patrick Baldwin's program, right? Higher Box. That program has two different evaluations. So that is a great program and very practical. I'll tell you where I feel that program is lacking. That program is lacking in aptitude testing. You know, you can get the personality, you can get the personality traits. Some clues about IQ, although not a thorough IQ. But where it really doesn't do nothing about it is aptitude. So I would suggest that you speak with Craig and James, and they can talk to you a little bit about using a program from MasterTech that can check for personality traits, can look IQ, scoring, as well as aptitude testing. I have to tell you, aptitude is very important, and aptitude can change, by the way, right? I mean, I can tell you, I've been testing myself for the past several years, and my aptitude has, oh my goodness, it has increased tremendously, and that's important. You don't want people who are going to make mistakes. You don't want people who are going to needle themselves by mistake, and then they get HIV, hepatitis, or whatever, you know. You don't want that. You want someone who's swift, uptone, thinking all the time how they can improve conditions of the patient they have across from them and do it right. Yeah, I would say look for an uptone person who, when you communicate with them, are not very slow in their communication. You know what I'm saying? And that you ask them during the interview process on how they would handle something, how they would apply something. Even you ask someone, let's say that you ask someone in the interview process, how would you handle a situation A, B, C, D? Okay? And the answer that you get is not what you necessarily expect, right? But you know what? You're not going to find every single time the perfect person out there. The idea is not to find the perfect person. The idea is to find someone who's willing to be trained, who's willing to change, who's not afraid of change. So what if during the interview process you told that person, by the way, let me give you a piece of data, and you tell that person something, you teach them something during the interview process, and then you ask them the question, by the way, a case like this, that, and that, how would you handle it? And see how the person has learned swiftly from what you presented to them, and they give you an answer where they apply what you just told them.
Can you think of like an actual like question
Sure.
or what you would teach them and then ask them?
Yeah, I mean, it can be a clinical thing. You can tell a person who has no idea about electrodiagnostics or anything like that. You tell a person, well, if you had a patient in front of you who was complaining of numbness and tingling in digits 2 and 3, what do you think would be a clinical examination that you would do for that patient? What would be the differential diagnosis? So you hear some answer, and then you can tell the person, okay, so Nerves exit from the cervical spine. You have the plexuses. You have the C5, C6, whatever, go down to the brachial plexus, and there's a distribution where 3.5 fingers here and 1.5 finger here. And the problem can be in various locations along the distribution. All the person says, okay, that's interesting. And then you can ask the question, well, what if you had a person who had numbness and tingling in the pinky finger? Now you switch it around, you see? You switch it around. You said before digits 2 and 3. So you say, how about the person who had numbness in the pinky finger? What would be some of the differentials? So then you want the person to apply the knowledge you gave them that the problem can be all along. And they can say, okay, it can be the wrist, it can be at the elbow, it can be at the brachial armpit, it can be at the neck, lower cervical. Something like that. Or it can be like a other type of administrative type of thing. It doesn't have to be all clinical. It's just because clinical people feel more comfortable.
Can I add something to that? So as far as that aptitude, I want to give an example of how I really missed one this last year. About 2 years ago, I was interviewing a PT that this was her second career. She had a PhD in microbiology and had taught at the university level for about 5 years, and then decided that she needed a career that was more interactive with people because she's a people person. And I'm like, wow, that sounds like an aptitude winner to me, both on the academic side. So we started talking about diagnostics right away, gave me all the right answers for, hey, I'm really interested in EMG. That is phenomenal technology to be able to test and be able to appropriately diagnose patients. So we started going down this road. One of the aptitude things that I missed that I don't know if you guys find in your interview process that sometimes is a really large stumbling block is the I believe idea. This is a fixed idea that some PTs have. This fixed idea that I believe I should do the minimal intervention and hope for the maximum outcome, which doesn't always correlate. In fact, rarely does. And this was her mindset, but I didn't recognize that. I didn't pick it up in the interview process. So she started with us, bailed on all diagnostics ideas because she was never going to do them in the first place because it was a costly intervention. It added more to the patient's bill. What we have termed in our, really in our practice, the PT that will trade their service for a chicken, right? I don't really need to be paid. I'm not interested in your copay. I'm not interested in you paying your bill. I will exchange my services for a chicken, right? And that fixed idea is a stumbling block with diagnostics for sure. And that just as an example, just talking about the aptitude, there may be an aptitude of academic learning in this case that was phenomenal, but a fixed idea that really we could not educate beyond. She left us.
Tracy wants to speak.
I just wanted to let you know that we've been using Firebox. They do have rolled out an aptitude test now.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, so it's just within the last.
So what about the bonus process? Because that's what we,
The what? Oh,
the bonuses, because that's where the stumbling block right now. A lot of people, you know, with business that are not very high and we get into new business. So I find this guy and kind of, he's up, well, what is going to be for me? You know what I mean? So how you settle that issue?
I probably shouldn't talk on this now because I'm going to talk about this a little bit later and
Okay.
give you lots of examples.
Yeah.
But if you guys, anybody else want
There's a
to?
discussion of this topic.
You know, I think that the other thing that you haven't really talked about, but, you know, in your area too, is that I do talk about, you know, in the interview process about the business of physical therapy. Because, you know, the thing is that, you know, it's not, you know, like when I got back in 81, we were just idealistic, you know, this is how we're going to do. But, you know, as all of us know in private practice, we understand there is survival and what you need to do every day and maximize so that you are, because we're fighting that. So that's one of the discussions I always have with my interviewees is we sit down and we talk about the business of physical therapy, because I'm gonna put it right to them. If they are that, they're either gonna run away because they want everything we're terrible, or they're gonna understand the process, because definitely, that is one of our discussions every time about the business, the cost, what the expectation is to come on board.
Question. Oh, Ron, right on here.
I have a question, very specific question. I have an opportunity next week, I just found out this week, to get in front of the graduating third year PC class. So I'm gonna have them all in on Zoom, and it's gonna be an hour all about Magnolia Physical Therapy and whether they're a good fit, which is really cool. So if each of you would be great, if we don't have the time, maybe a couple of you could go down the line. It'd be great if you could go down the line and tell me what would be the one question that you would ask that group if you can only ask one, and what would you be looking for?
Well, as if they were interviewing.
Yeah, as me. What should I ask them? I got a pretty good idea, but I want to hear from you guys.
Are you presenting something specific, or what's your intention of?
I just found out about this last night. So I figured out, but I'm just not really clear. Are you looking for topics to present on, or are you trying to, we're gonna be in a, basically like a two-way or 20-way, whatever it is, communication with the PT class, just about, it's gonna be more about, finding the right fit for them. It's specifically about what Magnolia has to offer. So there's gonna be some Q&A. It's not all presentation. That's largely what it is. Oh, it's a lot of Q&A? Oh, okay.
You're asking
I want to know, like,
You're
what
asking
are
questions?
basically, I get to ask a few interview questions to a whole bunch of people at one time.
You have to ask if you're wanting an interview question for how many people to answer?
20. 20, so I can't,
Okay.
or it could be something more open-ended and say, who would, blank, and have one or two people answer. It's an interesting, I haven't been in this situation before.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity.
And the intention is that you were like, the way it was framed to the students was that you're being brought in, and like, hey, there's a company that just wants to present themselves to you guys.
It's something new that the school is doing. They're doing it with a few companies, and we're one of the slots.
I love it.
So you have an opportunity that only a few PT clinics in the area are able to do, which is get in front of a lot of new grads.
Correct. And the new grads are interested because they can just jump on a Zoom real quick and get in some interview time and some face time with a potential employer, which is cool.
I think one thing I would ask is, what's the number one experience you're looking for in your first employment experience as a physical therapist? And I think if they answered anywhere close to money, all those folks would be off my table.
Yeah, I like that.
So I honestly, respectfully, I don't know if the question is the main focus for me in that position. For me, I think the focus is being super clear as to what the offering is, highlighting. Remember, you want to be, selling is about education, right? We want to educate on what it is that the opportunity is specifically, as well as the downsides. So like it depends on what my avatar is. If my avatar is going to be an electrodiagnostician or an electrician, I would specifically look for, like highlighting the opportunities specifically and say, listen, we're looking, because if we're going into that from a physical therapist, from a staff physical therapist position, that's a different description. And so if that's where purpose and values come in, Ron. It's like, hey, at Magnolia, you know what we stand for? And here's the values that we use to make our criteria. People want to join a mission. They don't want a job. They want to be part of a movement. So presenting the movement clearly will attract the right people like magnets more than any question, because this is a lead generation activity less than an interview, the way I see it. So it's a matter of like, this is what we're about and this is what we're not about. I like to say things very clearly, like we're not for everybody. We're looking for leaders who want to take on additional challenges with a privately owned startup company that's been proven, but still going through some changes. And I'll tell you right now, it can be tough here sometimes, and we're looking for someone who's really passionate about making even a bigger impact with patients, because we're doing electrodiagnostics. So we're looking for someone who's going to go out of school, who's going to learn how to get their skill set up, and then immediately dial down on additional tools in their tool, like a totally different tool belt altogether. But the reward is high. We're going to have one of the most specialized clinicians in the country. We're going to put you in a position where you'll have better earning power financially. And then that way, it's like, but if you're not interested in all this extra work, if you're looking for just to get your skill set up, then don't apply. Telling people what you don't want can be just as powerful as telling people what you do. And so in a case like that, then it's a matter of like seeing who, if you're interested and like to meet with me, here's my email call to action. I will do a free individual consultation or interview with each of you, and I'll give you feedback on this. Even if you're not sure, interview, because some powerful people, the big problem I find is that a lot of powerful people don't know they're powerful. So your A player might be second guessing themselves, gosh, I would love to do that, but I don't know if I'm worthy or able to take on diagnostics. But when they show up to that interview, they might present in a way you're like, oh no, you're perfect for this. I believe in you. And that's when we get to do what Denise was talking about, you know, bringing up the
Yeah,
best.
I was really thinking about, just since I've been at the conference, well, of course, I just got the opportunity to do it, but I really do think I'm going to lean on the advanced education, which I always do, because we have those opportunities being manual therapy fellows and things. But I do believe I'm going to hit really hard on the diagnostics opportunity and stuff like that, because that's what I need. That's what I want.
Do you know what else you could do? I've been on a couple of webinars where buyers, people that would buy your practice, have shared, I think Professional did and USPT and another place, and they shared, it was fascinating, they shared how they pick a practice and all the little details that they like evaluate. And it was really interesting because I was like, oh, you know, as I'm really interested in that kind of, you know, I'm getting older, you know, I'm like looking at a transition plan. So I think you could almost even set it up like that. Like, I want to share with you, like include all that information, but I thought it would be good to like share with you what an employer might be looking for and why do they ask certain questions? Like you could almost give them the insight, because that's what these groups did, because it wasn't only the financials that they talked about. They were also looking for alignment, the same thing with the purpose and the goals and lifetime learners and, you know, involved in the community and, so like you could talk about.
Name one kid, right?
Right, but you same thing, you give your purpose, you give your goals, you're looking for people that align, and you can say, so here's the kind of questions people might ask you. You might think it's odd if somebody asked you this question, and we have this one question that we've added, has nothing to do with clinical, but we ask this question, and for different positions, we look for different answers. What's your favorite thing to do on your day off? It's a really kind of unusual question, but like the way our practice is, if I have somebody interviewing for a physical therapy position and they say, oh, all I want to do on my day off is sit home and stay in bed all day. It doesn't fit with my culture. You know what I mean? But maybe somebody in billing, if they say, you know what, I just want to read a book or clean my house or, you know, like it's different. You know what I mean? So anyways, I think you could structure it like that and they would get a lot of benefit. And you could say, like, you could talk about this is what employers look for. I'll give you some examples of the kind of questions I ask, and maybe not all of you would be the right fit for this practice, but you might be a good fit for a different practice.
Ron, from my side also, I agree very much for this particular type of setting that we have, which is not really an interview process. It's more of an enlightenment process of what is your practice all about. I do agree very much on the handling with what Will presented. And if I would put some questions out there, the questions would not be at this setting for them to prove themselves to you that they would be the right candidate. It would be more questions where you can see their viewpoints about things and how readily they are able to respond to express a viewpoint with no hesitation. So I would have a conversation such as, for example, what do you guys think about the role of physical therapy in the handling of the opioids in society? What if I tell you that a Sperling's test that we use so extensively to look at cervical radiculopathy has a sensitivity of only 30%? what is your idea about this when, and how would you feel if a coronavirus test has had a sensitivity of 30%? And just see what they're going to say. You know, see how quickly they'll be able to confront that and present. And then, of course, when they come to an interview, right, then, of course, you can ask questions such as, after they know about your practice, questions such as what they will make them the ideal candidate for the position that you're offering. You know, but that's a different setting, that's a different environment.
Thank you so much for.
Thank you.
joining us. We've got a couple more questions and we'll move on to other topics. Any other question?
Kind of already answered, but from like a clinical instruction, like as a student, what do you look for as the ideal student coming in and getting training from HOTS?
Do you mean?
That's probably more Demi's question.
Again,
but I mean,
students come.
I don't
like
know
new
if it's like
grads?
because it's kind of a question of, is a new grad better as a student per se versus somebody who's more experienced?
Yeah, I would say that we have not had students who would come specifically for HART, specifically for diagnostics. We had students who came in and they knew about our practice and they knew that we were offering diagnostics also, but diagnostics was not their number one thing that they knocked the door, knocked to our door. So what I would look at, I would look for someone who is interested to identify areas outside of the typical physical therapy that they feel that, okay, yeah, I've learned a whole bunch of stuff now, but the title BPT does not mean that I arrive now at the destination, okay? People who want to always learn, who always want to improve, like that type of student, I want to say, okay, yeah, I'm interested to learn more. I'm interested to explore another avenue, another possibility, you know? And then, of course, in cases like that, where you're able to have a student to migrate right after graduation to your practice, there are great opportunities to make long-term commitment contracts there, agreements that can be very valuable to practice.
Maybe let me rephrase that. Like, we send somebody to you to train. Like, this isn't just, I'm not talking about new grads, but just in general, like, what's the ideal candidate you guys like to have for training? The ideal student, as in like a hot, somebody who's coming and doing the training, what's the ideal candidate for you guys versus what we see? Because yeah, we're looking at them and saying, well, how are they going to do the testing? But for you guys, like, you don't want somebody who's not going to respond to your emails. You don't want somebody who's like going to be difficult to get to training, those type of things. But is there anything specifically you look for in somebody that we send training to you that's an ideal candidate?
Yeah. A few things I would say on that is, first of all, someone who has a high interest level on learning this technology. Okay, that's one thing. Their interest level. Second thing is that someone who, when they really, for whatever reason, don't understand something, they are able to confront the fact they don't understand it and ask questions about it. Find out, okay, I can tell that I have no clue what I'm reading about here. Okay? If a person, to show off that they understand everything, they are not asking the question, hey, I have no clue I don't know how to hold the stimulator, okay? You know, they have to say that. If they try to hide it, then they become incompetent, right? Then you want someone who will dedicate not only paid time, but also their own time to learn something. If it is paid time only, the level of responsibility decreases a little. You want people to put their own time there. The weekends, yes. I mean, for our staff, for example, there's an agreement that you are on a training. The training is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. For Friday, which we consider it a work day, you'll be in the training and you'll get paid. But for Saturday and Sunday, it's on your own time. And you have to put your own time at home too. And you look at that, those are important. People who are willing to do that, they are more successful because they take more responsibility.
They bring something to the table.
They bring something to the table. Good communicator, exchanging emails. Look, you know something, I can name so many different things, but that root, that foundation is one, like the degree and the willingness, the degree of willingness that the person has to take responsibility for it. That is like really the foundation of it. And then, of course, to have interest for the area they are willing to take responsibility for. But okay, I'm willing to take responsibility, absolutely. But I'm not interested really in scuba diving. All right. So, okay. But I'm interested, I don't know, in flying spaceships or something like that. So the thing that they're interested and they take responsibility.
Does that help then?
Yeah.
Good, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, we're listening to management here, and interesting is we actually have a rock star here who's an employee. I actually would like to, put her in the spot and survey her. And if she was willing to it,
Sure.
Well, I thought the same thing, Jennifer. Since you're working for Dan, you obviously have some qualities and you've taken diagnostics as your own, essentially, for Dan's practice. Are you at a point yet where you're hiring other diagnosticians within your practice?
I'm there where I'm needing it, like within the next probably month.
And so have you found qualities within your team that you thought would be good diagnosticians?
So I definitely have one. I don't know if you guys remember her from the symposium, Miranda. She did the presentation with me on the patient portal. I mean, when it comes to her qualities and I mean, I think her and I, it's crazy that we're so similar. Not to say that I'm amazing or this or that, but I see a lot of the motivation and drive, that I have to take something, make it your own, and then progress it. And one of the biggest things when I was kind of listening to everyone, talking, and Bart and I think we're talking about this last night with John as well. But you have to have like that person that wants to succeed. And you have to have like some sort of and I think about you guys, like what quality do you have that's made you go on this venture of diagnostics and take it as your own, despite everything else that you're doing, and you guys are like looking for, people like you, people that want to pioneer, people that want to take something and make it their own. And I think one of the biggest things, for me is I've luckily had a lot of freedom, to do that. And I can make my own schedule with diagnostics, and I can create things. And if I need some time to do that, I'm doing that on my own to make my process easier. So you want someone definitely that is going to take what they're doing, making it to perfection, and then finding a way to make it easier on themselves as well. So for me, I've put a lot of things in place that my therapists now work for me. I mean, they don't technically, but they do a lot of like the legwork, and my admin do a lot of the legwork because they want to help and they want to do this, but I've made it such an easy process that they don't mind doing it. Simple click of a button, you know. So you definitely, and I agree with Demi on this too, as someone that is forward thinking. You can't have someone that's just going to be in and out. You have to have someone that sees a problem, and this is diagnostic or even, you know, running a program. You know, you have to have someone that sees a problem. Oh, well, I'm going to go tell my boss, you know, what the problem is. Like, no, I'm going to try and fix this. And then I'm going to go to my boss and I'm going to say, hey, this is what happened. This is what I did. Do you have any other suggestions? And usually it's, did it work? Yes. Good. So you want someone like that too, that's going to solve problems or come up with solutions. Very solution-oriented person to be able to battle all of this. And even when it comes to like the residency too, battling your time management. How am I going to work and study? How am I going to get all these reports done? And kind of that whole process too, like being able to find a solution to make it work, which all of you guys have done with all of your successful practices.
So how did you know you wanted to do GCS? You worked for Daniel for a while, and how did you know you wanted to do that?
I did not. Neuromuscular was my least favorite. Okay, first of all, science was my least favorite and most challenging subject since grade school. And somehow I got into anatomy and I was like, okay, well, this makes sense. I can use physics, I can use math, which I love. And then I started working, didn't really find like a niche, didn't find something, you know, I was a good manual therapist. I understood exercises, body movements, physics, all that stuff. And then Dan said, hey, you want to go to this conference or this training? Okay. He sent me away for a weekend. I remember not even being able to set up the machine. I got there and Demi was like, you're not on my list. I'm like, well, I'm here. So can I stay? You know, he just didn't buy my ticket. He didn't, like, it was so strange. I didn't have a machine. I didn't, you know, and setting up the machine, you know, and kind of that, like even it's color coordinated. It's not that hard to set up, right? So I was like, no idea. So, but I think what got me is the mere fact that you want also someone that wants to help people. And you want someone that wants to go to all lengths and bounds to be able to help people. So as soon as I heard the specificity, the sensitivity of these exams and how I'm doing such an injustice to my profession by just willy-nilly doing nerve glides every time, you know, I have someone with radiating pain, you know, I mean, that kind of captured me when it came to the diagnostic portion is, okay, you know, I'm a person that I don't want to get a 40% on an exam. You know, I want that 98, I want that 99. There's a bonus question I'm going to answer and I'm going to get a 105. So, you know, you want someone who not only, you know, cares about what they're doing, but cares about their outcomes and how they're going to help people.
So how would I recognize someone with your characteristics?
That's the tough part. That's why I wish Dan was here, because then he could say, I was thinking the same thing, but what did he see in you? And that's the unfortunate part. Not to say it's that way. But what did he saw something in you that made him think she might be really
well, there
well.
was 3 things that he said to me. So first of all, I showed up without a resume. And what happened is I left it, I was driving from Key West up there, I left it on the coffee table. So what I did is I had a contact number for the office. I called the office and I sent it to the front desk girl and I said, I need you to print this and have it ready for me when I get there, please, like, please, please, please. So initiative, you know, taking it. So I ended up getting there and the printer wasn't working and he's just like, did you bring a resume? I was like, no. He was just like, and I told him the whole story. He's like, but you called here and tried to get them to print it? Yes, I did. And I can email it to you. It's right here. Like, I have it. I don't care. He didn't even look at my resume. So then the second thing, and he said was big, was, you know, eye contact. You know, and when you interview with someone and when you talk to someone and when you converse with someone, you can find, you know, genuine qualities in them by if they're willing to, when you ask them a difficult question, look them in the eyes and answer that question with full honesty and transparency. And so, you know, he would ask me questions and I'd say, well, you know, he mentioned diagnostics. I was like, well, I don't know anything about that. And he goes, well, would you be interested in learning about it? I mean, it's my least favorite, and I told him it's my least favorite subject. But if it's something that, you know, you think would fit your model, you know, I'm willing like to learn that. So I would say the transparency, and then the last thing he said for me was I would say wittiness. I don't know what better word to call it. He probably has a better word for it. But you want someone who isn't necessarily intimidated by you, but understands that you're the boss. And I think he said that I gave him that. Like I'm willing to collaborate and present and to give feedback within a knowledge of constraint that, okay, I don't, you know, I will still follow, you know, whatever you think is best for your company. So he kind of said like my ability to respond and to banter and to, you know, create a very mutually respectful relationship and understanding those roles.
Just real quick, so Jennifer, in your case, you were hired on to do diagnostics specifically?
No.
When did you get in diagnostics after Dan brought you on?
I was hired and then directed, I guess, the clinic there for probably about 6 months. And then once he realized, I think that I was staying and I wasn't like a transient, you know, therapist, was when he kind of.
Yeah, so it's, the reason I say that is that it's interesting to me because Dan is really smart. Dan's the reason Nathan and I are in diagnostics, just so you guys know. But Dan, you know, I can see where like this is just useful information. You're instructing us on how, like, when we bring someone in, they show the characteristics of leadership, and leaders can do anything. Self-starters can do anything. That's what Demi was talking about. And the thought that I had, especially as I was looking at Ron, is the idea that in talent acquisition, the mindset shift that's also very useful is to change from becoming a hunter to a gatherer. Like instead of going out there and trying to find the right candidate, it's a matter of creating experiences like Ron's going to have here in a couple of days, where he can show, right? Not tell, but show what the company's about and then attract leaders. Because I think, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is that it's less about like the perfect diagnostic fit and more about leadership. If we can find people who can be leaders, it's a mindset over skill set thing. You know, I don't think you were born to do diagnostics. I think you're a leader. I think leaders can do anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I will say one other thing for you guys, if you ever have the opportunity, he likes to do group interviews as well. I didn't get one of those. Group interviews are one big thing. And then he also does working interviews. So he'll keep them at the clinic for 3 hours, see if they have the guts to talk to a patient, to work with a patient, to talk to the other employees, and evaluate their presence within the clinic, just to see if they would be a good fit.
We haven't delved into the hiring process, but a successful hiring process, I think, requires a working interview for sure, as well as the face-to-face. And for the high turnover positions, we also did a lot of group interviews on a monthly basis. Again, whether we were hiring or not, we would do group interviews for the front desk and tech positions that were in our company.
Let Jennifer know that New Orleans is awesome. I mean, I see this as a much easier line. Kind of obvious. Look at it. It's about the DNA, the whole thing. Will's jealous.
I don't know if we spent a lot of time on recruiting. We have other topics to get to, so I'm sorry. I like to take any more questions on that here because I want to talk. We want to move on. We need to go into retention, and so I'm going to turn some time over to Bart to talk to us a little bit about retention.
Since they are putting up there the presentation now, we'll take a couple of seconds. I just want to for those who are watching, also from home, and to those of you, I have something in my, that kind of stuck in my mind and I want to get it out there. Will, when he started this presentation, he really made a very, very strong and powerful point and case about, creating the diagnostic business as its own entity, as its own business, and taking responsibility for it. And here is the point. I want to make sure, guys, that you do not see this as a huge unconfrontable task or thing to do, okay? It is very doable. It doesn't have to be all at once. It can be on a gradient. Okay, what can we confront first? There's a system to it. Let's start with the fundamentals. What is it? Establishing the major fundamental, taking responsibility to think that, okay, you know what? I am making the decision that this will be its own individual separate business that will require some of my attention. So that's a decision. Well, right there is 90% of the game won there. The rest is logistics. What do I need to do? Form a separate company, have a separate organizing board, create a program, a plan of execution. The rest of the stuff are logistics, they are mechanics. But the thing is taking the decision. You make the decision for it, that's it. Confront that thing first. That's all. And then the rest are mechanics that can happen over a period of time. Don't think, but it's a mountain. Let's make the decision to start climbing the mountain. And then we'll go step by step. Okay? All right.
Art.
Okay, so this is a wonderful picture of me. This is probably taken the day that I was sitting for the ECS boards, and I really appreciate Coach being down there in Southern Utah and doing my recruiting, right, for me. And really what I picked up on is kind of a pattern here, because you can't retain diagnostic PTs if you don't recruit diagnostic PTs. This is kind of the mindset. And so really we recruit, we train, we excel, and that yields retention. And so this, I'm just going to show, this is, and it really is a change in culture, right? It's a massive, actually, change in culture. And by the end of my quick presentation here, you're going to recognize that as I changed in our practice from a culture of physical therapy only to a culture of diagnosticians as physical therapists, we lost people and we gained people, but our gain was retained. So who we declare that we are and who we know that we are as individuals comes from a lot of aspects in our lives. I might be able to say, hey, my name is Bart McDonald. I am a physical therapist. I am a skier. I am a father. I'm a grandfather. I am a diagnostician. I am a lot of things, right? But whatever we declare within our culture of our practice really is an identifier of the individuals that make up that practice. And it, by taking on diagnostics, you better understand it will change your culture. And obviously, you made this decision because it changed the culture for the better, as well as our outcomes. So let's see what Alexis has to say.
Aficionado. I'm a fashionista.
Sneakerhead. Metalhead.
Gearhead. Audiophile.
Gamer. I'm a foodie.
Woo! I'm whatever this is.
Obsession has many names. This is ours, the new Lexus IS. All in on the sports sedan. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
Sorry, what I really liked about that was that that catchphrase of obsession has many names. Like that just grabs you, doesn't it? I mean, and when you walk into our practice, and if you were to ask some of our physical therapists about, well, who is Bart McDonald? They'd be like, oh, it's the guy that's obsessed with ultrasound. He is the guy over there in the corner with the needles, obsessed with EMG. He's the one that asks us all the time about, hey, I noticed that guy you did an eval the other day, and the patient has a little bit of foot drop. What you seeing there? Oh, well, you didn't refer that patient. What? Let's talk about this. And they would say there is a literal obsession there. But the question in this process is like how to really get that outside of ourselves, right? And change our culture so that it's an obsession for everybody. And I would say in the last 5 years, what I'm going to describe is how that gradual, intentional to a certain degree, accidental on some occasions, has occurred within our practice. So let's go next slide. So this is us. This is kind of our logo. We picked this up when we threw this together. My wife and I did this in our basement. When we opened our practice, we thought, oh, this is good. What is probably talking about the avatar, what's our universal patient? Well, somebody's got to get back to something functional, something athletic. I want a running man. And it's interesting because in our community, every other practice that was started after ours also has a running man on it. So cool. Love it. So diagnostics is our obsession. We started in 2015. Our first EMG was performed December 17th, 2015. I think that was performed with Dini, and I think our first one, if I'm not mistaken, was Charcot-Marie tooth. Very interesting. Oh, wow. Yeah. First MSKUS was performed on the 18th. I think it was a neural ultrasound, if I remember correctly, for carpal tunnel. Total MSKUS is performed to 1,119. And I'm sure there's practices here that are just so much further than we are. But I thought one of the things that's kind of describing this culture change to be able to at least just numerically show you how this has gradually occurred. Total EMGs performed 619. If we could get Jennifer to join our practice, we could double that in about 3 weeks. But we're getting there, right? And of course, as far as putting our obsession up there, you have a full fitness therapist. Okay, so in our transition, let's look at next one. Yep. Kind of what is our culture? And this was not our culture before. And I'm going to tell you that the most painful thing as you change your culture is you may lose good physical therapists. We certainly did. But it was for a greater good, a greater cause, and a much better retention outcome by the time we get to our final slide. So who are we? We are enthusiasm, integrity. We are compassion. We are unity or e-unity, depending on how you see that, and excellence. And when we talk about diagnostics, we're kind of always gravitating towards our core value of excellence. We talk about excellence in our outcomes, excellence in our performance, excellence in changing our profession. And so
I think that's really, and I don't want to disrupt you, but it's important to highlight his connection between his values and diagnostics. Because a lot of therapists will say, why are we doing this? I can do, I'm really good at special tests. Why can't I do that? Yeah,
that 30% really pays off.
But
all the time.
But when you're able to tie it back to your purpose and your values, and say, oh, okay, well, there's a reason we're doing this. It's not just because whatever we want to come up with. It's because we live our values greater and we serve our purpose more because of diagnostics. So making that connection helps bring on those people that you want.
Absolutely. One of the biggest barriers that we've had in the last 5 years is the therapist that doesn't understand how much we're saving medical dollars by performing more. And that can be the therapist that doesn't understand that when I have a patient, we were talking about this last night, when I have a patient with weakness, anywhere in their initial evaluation, and the therapist is like, yeah, so I set up a plan of care where I'm treating him 1 to 2 times a week. I'm thinking, I go to the gym, and when I go 1 to 2 times a week because I've been non-compliant with my own therapy protocol there, once a week, I'm really, really, really sore. And then you come in the next week for that 1 time a week, and I just get really, really, really sore. I almost would say that there's really no value there. I mean, there's some maybe, but what I know a few years ago, I was at a conference and Kostas was there, and I was sitting there thinking, man, I need to get up in the morning and I need to go and work out. And who beat me there? He was there in the corner doing his exercise. He was doing planks, core routine, stretching, yoga. He was doing all these things, and beat me there to the gym. And I left before he did. Okay, so I mean, what we try to demonstrate in our lives, and then what we try to bring as who I am into the clinic and in that clinic setting, who that core value is. I'm not trying to say that you can't be a physical therapist if you don't work out more than Kostas does, but I'm just trying to say, look, we try sometimes to say, it's our home exercise program that's going to get this person better, because my home exercise programs are just that good. When we know that on average, 6% compliance with my home exercise program. So it means I'm only going to get 6% of my patients better. That's pretty poor outcomes. Same idea with our diagnostics. If we are really have an undershooting and we're not going to maximize who we are as professionals, we'll never arrive. And that really does apply here. So, yeah, you go.
Just a quick thing. Yeah. So there is a study for MDs, at least in the medical community, that if the MD practices what they are preaching to their patients, they have better results. And there's a study of that. They have like videos and like a doctor saying, and by the way, I've been running also every other day and I'm doing this kind of exercises, so you better do it too as a patient, right? Those patients, they get better compared to other doctors that they don't tell them anything about their lifestyle. So interesting. So when I do interviews, I want to make sure that my physical therapist, it's not like an obese person, that moves like that, or even if they have arthritis in their knee, it's not going to be a good match for my practice. Okay? I want them to be, the person that really take care of their body and what they preach they do. Make sense?
Well, one of my favorite physicians in Idaho that I work with quite a bit is a guy named Warren Willie. Wrote a book called "What Does Your Doctor Look Like Naked?" Really a good read if you want to pick that up on Amazon. It shows his chest on the, and he's kind of got his stethoscope and this hairy chest coming on right here. And it's actually kind of bulging through just a little bit. Anyway, I think it just lends to what Kostas is saying. So in our clinic, really clinical excellence in diagnostics, we get a development of culture of excellence. It drives our therapists. And obviously, this is who we're trying to hire. We just went through, boy, we're looking for somebody that has leadership, who has aptitude, who's really going to go home at night and do a little bit more reading. And that isn't going to say, oh, I'm sorry, Bart, I can't take this class because it was on a weekend and you're not paying me for that Saturday, but it distinguishes us from our competition in the higher level of quality care. And in that whole hiring process, and then we'll get to the retention side of this, one of the things that I think Will alluded to is letting them know, and we do this in all of our interviews, is that, hey, the reason we're talking to you today is we really believe that you are a good fit somewhere. We just don't know if it's here. And we really want you to have a successful, thriving life and happiness. We think if you're a great fit for us, we're a great fit for you. This is going to be a great long-standing relationship. But if we're not a good fit, we just need to figure that out, because you'll find a great spot somewhere else.
You want to go to the next slide?
Yeah, thanks. So just a little history on us. We opened a clinic in a Gold's Gym in 2008. Go to the next slide. Yep, we're going to hit a few of these just quick in a row. Up in Idaho Falls, just north of that one in 2011. Clinic at what we call Vista Clinic back down in Pocatello in 2017 with more diagnostics there. And then at Idaho State University on campus right during COVID. It was like we opened in January and that. Shut it down temporarily, reopened it back up again. We've had our struggles just like everybody else. But here is our diagnostic stats, right? Green is money. Is that helpful? And then our other totals. Here is a problem that I identified along the way. And I want to talk about some of the problems too and be very transparent. I was the only EMG provider in our practice. So 2016, we started in 2015 with a few studies. 2016, we jumped up, went up all the way to 2018 with about 60,000, 60,000 in just EMG reimbursement. And it looks like about 180 studies that year. And actually went down in 2019 as we started to expand some practices and I had more administrative roles. It was more difficult to actually, and I think one as we were looking at some of those stats, some of my, one of my administrators came back and said, actually, we're going the wrong way in this stat. What's the problem? And I said, well, I don't want to advertise for more EMGs. I don't have time. Please don't advertise. So just for everybody else that really wants to hire Jennifer, this is really a good idea. Okay, next slide. Now we've had a little bit of a different trend though in ultrasound. We started out 2016, didn't really do much. There was not much change between 2017 and 2018. And then we really started to take a jump. And what I'm gonna propose to you and we talked a little bit of this in Atlanta. Anybody remember what we were kind of messing with in Atlanta as far as a bonus structure for PTs?
You're doing student loan compensation.
Yeah, and what we proposed in Atlanta, we ran into some barriers with. So what I proposed to all you guys in Atlanta, we had started with in this time frame. And you can see that it had a remarkable effect in our volume and what we were making. But what I was proposing, I had talked to one of our accountants that said, hey, I think that you can do student loan repayment. So we sat down and created a bonus structure that I'm going to show you in a minute, but we've had to modify it a little bit. You can do student loan repayment of $5,285 in that range, pre-tax every year. Now that means if I, for instance, set up the program where they do 5 a week, 20 a month, and they consistently do that for the whole year, I'm going to give them $10,000 extra a year, which is a pretty good chunk of change, especially if I can, of the $5,285 going directly into their student loan account, if that is then pre-tax, what that really turns into is about $13,200-ish in true value. So when you think about for a moment what that means, initially I was thinking just to new grads, but goodness guys, if you talk to anybody out 2, 3, 4 years out, they're still on the 30-year plan. When we ask our new grads coming in, what's your number one concern? And we really whittle down, they first say mentorship. The second thing they say is student loans. But really, what is the first problem that they have? Is student loans. Yeah, they're killing them. So the highest I've had as a new grad that's entered into our practice in the last 5 years was $230,000 in debt. Average beginning pay now in the United States for a PT out of school, something around 62, 63. Am I right? 4. They're never going to get there. So what we did, I don't even know if this is the next slide. Oh, so I added one more in. This is just kind of an effect of what diagnostics has continued to help us do. Is there a cause and effect from diagnostics entering into your practice? This is just our visits over the years, starting 210, and it just gradual trend out. But this is kind of what I really wanted to show. What you see here is red is being recruited without diagnostics. This is over 10 years. And I just went back and counted. Now, this is not a really awesome stat. Honestly, if any of you guys looked into this stat and how I counted, you'd be like, Bart, this is kind of bogus just a little bit from the standpoint that 5 years ago, you made a massive cultural change in your practice. And some of the attrition that happened from what was in red here occurred as a direct result from changing and adding diagnostics to our practice. We weeded out some folks in a very unintentional way initially, and then we saw it as good. So what we found is in that 10-year time period, 11 PTs were hired without having anything to do with diagnostics. So the way I counted this is that Jennifer would have been in the blue category. She wasn't hired for diagnosis, she was recruited by diagnostics, but she was pulled into it, okay? So anybody that was either recruited directly, I came to James, I said, we are looking for a diagnostic PT, either an ultrasound or EMG. He was recruited in that. If I came to Jennifer and said, we're looking for a staff PT, she came on, and later on came into diagnostics, she's in the blue group. But we had 12 people during that same period and have retained 8 versus 11 and 1. So this is kind of my take-home message. When it comes to retention, when we push ourselves, we essentially retain our own focus. I love my job in diagnostics so much more than I love my job in PT alone. Why? Because it's got so much more depth. I love the game. I love finding out why the person has numbness and tingling in digits 2 and 3 and not guessing anymore at what that 30% spurling is telling me. Like, that's garbage. And people within our practice that really latch onto this, they stay forever because they can't really get it anywhere else. And because they really buy into this cultural change of excellence. We talked about excellence. We hired these DPTs, doctors of physical therapy. And honestly, one of the reasons that you see MPT behind my name is I have a little rebellious heart, right? Because what I saw at Emory University between 2020, 2020 and 2001, I graduated in 2000. And when they went to a DPT program, I asked them in this transitional DPT what they changed in the next graduating class. They added one class. It was one class on business. And I just went, oh, I'm being sucker punched here, right? So I haven't, at one point, Demi was talking to me, you should just get that DPT, and I probably should change, right? I should probably adapt a little bit. But what this take-home message for, I think, for all of us, and depending on where you're at in this cultural change, is there is a cultural change for diagnostics. We have retained our therapists. They are not just physical therapists anymore. We no longer hire physical therapists without diagnostics. Not ever again. So, any questions? Retain
I don't want a PTA because I don't want the cut next year, but is training a PTA in ultrasound a way to kind of salvage that part of the profession and give them a higher purpose?
I struggle with having the competency level at taking the pictures, right? And that's been our debate. And I don't know how you guys answer this, but we have 2 of our PTAs that we have pulled into ultrasound training. They can take pictures, but they're PTs that they work with. Let me go back to our structure. So we work in a team structure, and I don't know how we're going to completely address next year's change, but we have a PT and a PTA and a tech and a front desk, half front desk person. And that's their team. And we find it to be productive in our state because of the way the Practice Act, and no judgment on how anybody goes in their practice, but this keeps us government compliant with our Medicare, Medicaid, and making sure that we don't have overlap in some of those areas, but can still operate at a 1.3 patients per hour objective level. But I've got one PTA that is actually a clinic manager in our newer clinic. He's a Spanish speaker. He is really, really good. And he's teamed up with our other diagnostician in training and residency program for EMG, which I didn't feel was appropriate to take that PT and put him into leadership. So we automatically started to train the PTA to be able to take some of those. And the interesting thing is they kind of gravitate together. They kind of interpret the ultrasound together. They kind of do the diagnostics together. It's kind of bonded that team. And the patients, I watch them interact that way. And they're like, oh, it doesn't matter if I'm seeing Riker or Rigo in this case, like they both understand the ultrasound. So it's been a benefit, but I don't know if I really answered the question. That's just when we're done.
So Bart, you expect all of your therapists to learn to do diagnostic testing, or maybe explain that?
Yeah, so I have one from our graph that's been retained. She's been with us now for 8 years. She's a single mom. She does not have the willingness to put in the extra time outside of work, and I understand her situation with that. That's the only one that I have said that I'm willing to be flexible on. Everybody else must learn ultrasound.
So so you bring them in and they know that up front.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
And I usually let them choose when we're starting that program, but it's not if, it's just when. Interestingly enough, anybody else along the way, you saw what happens there in the red category, like they leave. They don't leave necessarily in our practice from, at least from their exit interview from saying, oh, it's because you are forcing me to do diagnostics. The last one that left our practice, it was because we had expectations on billing. If you're treating a patient for 60 minutes in our practice, you better darn well bill for 60 minutes in our practice, and she could never get beyond that. But that kind of goes to that same aptitude and fixed ideas that diagnostics really weeds out.
So you actually have a check sheet technology for training for your ultrasound people? You have actually a program set up?
Yes, do you want to hit the next slide? Oh, I think it has it on. Yeah. And I actually, you can't read this, so I will just give you a copy.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
I brought like 20 copies. I don't know how many you get. So. Yeah. Let me just hand this out really quick. It's back in the back. And this is what we've done. This shoots our therapist to still stay on track. Let me give you one of these. Oh, can you hand those out? Yeah, I'll just take one of them. So hopefully there's enough. We broke this up into 3 phases. Phase 1, and if they're a new grad, honestly, we don't start them in phase 1, sometimes for a couple of months. I want to see them be able to manage a decent caseload, work well with their PTA, some of those types of things, but a minimum competency level before we're going to start them down this path. But then phase 1 just kind of gives you, hey, you're going to get $17.50 each completed ultrasound plus your hourly wage. So we're not kicking you out. This is on top of you normally just making your normal salary. And then to advance to phase 2, and that phase 1 learning, by the way, we do a lot of internal training and kind of replicate that module 2A and 2B in afternoon sessions of 4-hour increments. It's on their own time, kind of back to that DME idea, where they're not paid. And they are given more materials to review and read and really be prepared for those courses. It takes them usually a series of about 3 months to make it through all of the joints, to 6 months, depending on how we've scheduled our scenario. And they need to pass POCUS exams 1 and 2. They need to also get 200 exams, 10 per joint. And we put together for us superior written and practical exams. When they get to phase 2, they make more money. It's kind of similar, but 1 through 19, meaning if they're doing 5 a week, we picked 20 because we really did it more from a quality of a learning aspect than a financial one, but it works out in the financial way as well. So somewhere at doing 5 a week. I don't know where I've heard this before. This might be from Deanie over and over and over again. Yeah, there's something about doing 5 of these a week to completion. Now, I'm not talking 5 where I took a few pictures and then I never went anywhere. You've got to write it, and it needs to be reviewed by a mentor, right? All the way through. But if you can do 20 a month, that's when you can see there that they're going to get a $500 bonus on the 20th. And then they make some more money beyond that if they do that. To make it to a phase 3, they need to pass either the FMSK or RMSK, and they get a bonus at the time of passing that exam, as well as their structure goes up a little bit. But in this process, we have some expectations and some deadlines and how the bonuses will be paid. When they get to phase 3, we expect them to be also a mentor and be able to read for other people and to be able to kind of expand out what we're trying to do within our organization. So yeah, tax. Let's go back to the tax issue. So we went and talked to a couple of other accountants, because our first accountant totally gave us, this is what we were proposing in Atlanta. He said, oh yeah, this is totally fine. That $5,280 pre-tax works just fine. It's kind of a gray area, but it's like you had hired them sometime during their education experience or before they graduated, and we'll just kind of pretend that that happened. And we went, this was after we presented Atlanta, we went, oh, we're not super comfortable with that. What happens if we get audited? And they said, oh, well, you'd have to pay fines, and they would have to pay the back tax. I'm like, well, that kind of makes me really look like a bad guy to the employee if that happens and they have to pay all this money back. So we're not super interested in that. So we talked to a few other accountants. We went back, and one of the things we're researching right now, and I think this would really lend well to Ron, your experience that you're about to have, right? If you've got 20 new grads, and you came back and maybe 10 of them come back and interview with you. The interesting thing is that they were all first years. I think this was what really that Will was kind of talking about, tracking people through the educational experience and being able to have information on them and have them meet with you often. The idea that we're trying to develop is can we get back to that tax idea if we could hire them for a few hours of training of something during their educational experience and set up a contract with them, so that we handpick the people. We actually have a contract with them before they graduate. Does that meet the IRS requirements? We're still, the jury's still out. We don't know yet, but we're still asking that question.
So do you know that, so from 2020, that it was more allowed to based on past administration? So it was in the healthcare, the COVID relief. And then they supposedly, when my CPA research came out, has been extended. Trump extended it through January, and then now it's supposed to be extended through 2025. So your need to change your plan may be able to be postponed until 2025, because that 5250 is now in that healthcare COVID Act.
Awesome.
So just know, like, be paying attention to it for the next 30 days to find out, and if I find out from my CPA that it actually did get extended further, I'll let you know.
And that's only for student loans.
Student loans, tax, pre-tax.
Can you repeat that for the audience?
Yeah, so because of the COVID Relief Act, what that was talking about is that you really, the ability for us to pay into their student loans and have it be a pre-tax scenario for the 5,250, something like that, is available. It might change in the future, but this is a great thing to do now. And what I think this is kind of back to the Will format of scheming in and dialing in on knowing all of these new grad potentials. I really think that you could, if given the right situation, be able to interview all these folks, talk to them, help them through the interview process, know all of the new grads within your footprint, and essentially sign them on before they graduate, that if I have a job, no obligation here, but if I have a job and you are interested in that job and we come together, then really what we're talking about is $13,000 a year that I am willing to, you making that money, put into student loan repayment. We, in our area, have a hard time recruiting. I'm in a peer-to-peer group, and one of the other guys out of Philadelphia always laughs at me because he's like, man, I can come up, I've got like 50 resumes every day sitting on my desk of different PTs. And I'm like, really? We have to Indeed out, we have to advertise, we have to do all of this stuff just to get 3. And now I'm picking between not always the cream of the crop. That's a bad position to be in when you're trying to get diagnosticians. Not good. It doesn't always fit our culture, more attrition in the future. We get the PhD microbiologist that really doesn't work out. I mean, those things happen, and they probably happen in a lot of cases, but we would love to have 30 to 50 resumes at any given time and know all of these people. And I really think that not only changing our culture, but being able to put that meeting their needs, their true need on loan repayment could be good. So put into your loan calculator, if I've got $180,000 in student loans, and I'm making, what was our average, 63, 64,000, something like that. We pay a starting PT 70,000 a year, so we go higher because we've got to recruit them in. And then we, by 6 months in, depending on their aptitude, a year, they could be making 80,000 a year. Anybody can beat that? I don't think you can. Can you beat it? Well, in Alaska, you could beat it. Dang it. What? Okay. But I mean, I think we're fairly competitive because before we were just being beat out hand over fist by people recruiting for like home health. I mean,
That's common. Traveling PT.
oh, traveling PT, home health, nursing home. And don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for those people in our profession that love doing that. But I hate to hear of a physical therapist that has phenomenal aptitude and really loves outpatient physical therapy. Not only what they do there, but the craft, the art. They have wonderful, wonderful career ahead of them, and they just pigeonhole themselves into something that they're going to hate because they've got $180,000 in student loans. So we can sit down with a loan calculator, plug in that 180 and say, look, I know you go anywhere else, you're only making 63, 64. So I want you to take $20,000 that we're giving you and plunk that all in the student loans. So there is other options for people to get out of debt, but not in doing the greatest thing in our profession that is available, which is right here in this room. So we really kind of decided we wanted to drastically change our recruiting and retention. We wanted to drastically change our culture. And you can see from a couple slides ago that our numbers in ultrasound, where we really put the pressure and we also put the reward, have just gone up and up. And we would expect that in the next couple of years, that we'll probably double that volume.
So question on, so everybody's trained in ultrasound. Now, how do you go about that? Do you train them or?
Yeah, so we have two.
Rephrase the question.
Yeah, so the question was, how do we go about training this? We have two of myself and another individual in our practice that are both FMSK. We do mentors for ultrasound. And so we've taken that on within our practice.
Okay, so somebody like us just starting.
Yeah, if you're just starting, you kind of want to set that as a goal. And I remember I sat down and talked with Demi and said, somewhere along the way, we're going to want to internally train. And he said, yeah, so that's, I mean, you get board certified in EMG, then really, would I send somebody to be trained by Jennifer? Probably, she's good, right? Would I train somebody asked me that because I just was board certified this last year. I actually on EMG chose purposefully to be kind of a second mentor because EMG is just harder, okay? And I just recognize that. It's a tougher skill set. And so I also have so many other responsibilities within our practice that I decided I wasn't going to be primary mentor there, maybe secondary, and I would learn a lot in the process as well. But for ultrasound, I felt very confident in having the two of us be able to teach and train.
So each of your therapists have their own schedules and then they just schedule the ultrasound, do it?
Yes. Yeah.
So let me answer part of that question you had. For us to maintain the clinical integrity of the program, we have specific guidelines and, unless you explicitly get an approval from HATS as Bart has to do internal training from the practice, you cannot do that. You have to go through all training through HATS. When you reach a certain level where we feel that you are able to deliver, training, guidance to the staff within a certain level of competency, then we provide you with that, okay, but not before that. Otherwise, we're going to have chaos out there and non-competency and problems with physicians and this and that. So, all right.
Well, and one thing on that, I mean, in talking to Mohini about what we were trying to move forward with, one of the things that she still wanted to make sure that we knew we had available is, as a group, we still will send reports to her when we don't understand what we're seeing. So we don't want to misrepresent either that this is, now we've got our own cowboy show, right? That's not what we're trying to do. And we want to maintain quality of what we're doing all the way through for the benefit of our patients, but also for the benefit of HOTS. It's been a fun road though, and it's a great place to be able to ride it.
Thanks for sharing, Bart. We're about 15 minutes behind on a break. Do you have enough?
I just wanted to ask a question about when they go to phase 3, so do they see it as, so just for clarification purposes, so they gotten their $1,000 bonus, and then when they go into phase 3, they're back down to that $1,750 from the $40 that they were getting. Do they see that as a backtrack, or are they so excited about the $1,000 that they just got, so they're okay with that?
Well, and in this scenario, they're excited about the $1,000 that they just got to bonus, right? But the other thing is that as we're growing our practices and growing other people, now they can talk to Mohini and get the green light to be a mentor within our scenario, and they can do reads for other therapists as well and mentor other people, right? So there becomes other ways for them to make money within the structure of ultrasound. Does that make sense?
Okay, we have a couple of, for those who are still coming back in, we have some online questions that we want to make sure the expert panel addresses.
How many PTs do they have doing MSK and or EMGs in their practice?
Yeah, so we have 12 PTs now, and 11 are doing MSK-US. 2 of us are now doing EMG.
Okay. Jamie, do you have all of your treating PTs at the clinic doing diagnostics?
So no.
Okay.
No. Diagnostic PTs are special. Anyway, we have 6 full-time people doing diagnostics. We have 2 PTs of the clinic or PTs that doing ultrasounds also. But the other PTs are not doing ultrasounds or any other.
Christina?
So we have,
I'll turn it on, I'm sorry.
we have 13 PTs, 2 are doing EMGs, 1's board certified, 8 therapists doing ultrasounds with two of the therapists supervising or doing the reads that have gone through everything. You know, other people have gone through most of the steps.
Thank you, guys. And there's one more question. This individual, this partner of HATS, is not very confident in her own ability to do the testing herself. So she's kind of semi-rhetorically saying she doesn't see getting PTs on board fully because she can't sell it and have the confidence herself to sell it to these potential recruits.
Like what would you, what
are
would
other
you tell
people?
her? What could, is that did she have a question related to it, or what could we?
Is that is it the same for most of you that you need the confidence first in order to sell it, to pitch it to recruits? Or are if people who are maybe less trained here, have you been able to get a diagnostician on board, even though you're not as savvy yourself and what to say and what you're doing? I guess.
I would say the person that answered that one is not here. Mindy from Washington, Irvine. She's in my peer-to-peer group. She doesn't do as the practice owner all the testing, but has other people doing testing underneath. And one of the things that we've done is collaborated because she felt like she had some gaps in that same way. And so we spent some time just walking through questions and answers over the last couple of years with therapists within her office, both myself and some of the other PTs that do the testing in our office. So I think if somebody's in that situation, like any of us would be super happy to spend some time just talking to their therapist and walking them through, because if the owner's not confident in being able to help them get to that point, other people are.
Yeah, one of the biggest realizations I had in my entrepreneurial journey was recognizing that I am not the product, right? Like, it's hard in a service-based industry because we get used to, as the owners and the obvious first choice to start providing care, that we are it. So this was a perfect question that's going to segue into my presentation this afternoon. But I own a billing company right now. Guess how many times I've ever billed a claim personally? Zero. Guess how many I've done since we started the business? Zero. It's because sometimes it's even powerful not to know how to do the thing. Like, being the leader is the thing. So in messaging or in recruiting, that's actually an advantageous perspective in some cases, because we're forced to build that business from a place of independent growth. Like, hey, listen, I'm getting into it myself. I'm really excited about it. Admittedly, I'm still learning the ropes. So I'm looking for a leader who's going to partner. We have to be careful with that word, but in certain contexts, we can partner with me and help me grow this new helping grow this new standalone business that's going to work within the walls of my existing successful practice. And if you'd like to take that adventure on with me, I mean, that's the kind of, people love to feel that call to excitement, right?
Is there another question? That's the last question. That's the last one. Jimmy wanted to talk a little bit about bonuses before we start wrapping things up.
Okay, so I get this question very frequently about bonuses, and we have come up with different solutions. The solution that I told you guys originally was, okay, just pick a number, bonus somebody based on a number per test or something. Years ago, we had created a system with points that was so complicated that it became not workable at the end, because of the high complication. Guys, this past July, we released a new bonus system. It has become a breakthrough that I can say now that because of that system, we are seeing highest numbers ever in the area of diagnostics. I'm going to show you the system. Okay, it's very simple. So the very first thing that somebody should do, and we're going to talk about that in the afternoon in the profit presentation I'm going to make. But the very first thing that somebody should do is they should determine really what is their revenue per test. Now, I'm going to write the number here, and you may get a little surprised, but don't get surprised. It's not 209, it's 225. We were talking about that on the phone. So I'm going to write this number down, 225. What is 225? $225 is what Hands-On EMG is making per test. Now, you're freaking out. Now, you're saying, okay, how come you're not making $500? No. When I'm saying 225 is the amount of money that we're making for every single test, including 1 unit ultrasound, including outside business, including ordinals, including SSCPs, including a test that we're gonna get paid $135, including when we're gonna go to a facility and we're gonna make $1,500 for the day and we're gonna end up producing 20 tests. It includes everything. It's like a big thing. So we're making $225 per test, okay? We're making $517 per clinical hour, 2.3 tests per hour. Because well, I'll go through this in the afternoon. That's not the important thing right now. What's the important thing is to use this now so that we can start deriving into the bonus. Now, this is not a bonus system so much for people who are gonna they're doing PT and all of a sudden they're gonna do 5 tests a week, five ultrasounds a week. That's not the type of system. This is for people who do high volume diagnostics. They are earning literally per year thousands and thousands of dollars from bonuses. Okay, so what is the bonus structure? There are 3 types of bonuses. The first bonus, we call it an individual bonus. The individual bonus. What we have determined that a range of 8 to 12 tests per day is paying off all of our expenses, and depending on the environment and the relationship, is making us somewhere between 20 to 60% profit. So if somebody produces on a day 8 to 12 tests, that makes us, not only breaks even for us, it makes us a profit of anywhere between 20 to 60%. Okay, depending on what is the relationship. Do we pay rent? Do we not pay rent? Who is doing the billing and all that? So here is the individual bonus. For every test that the diagnostician produces greater than 12 for the day, they are making $15 per test, no matter what the test is. Okay? If for the day they produce less than 8 tests, there is a penalty of $15 per test less than the 8. So there is a penalty also associated, not only there is a plus, but also the responsibility for not making enough to maintain the viability of the company.
You count the ultrasound as a test too?
Okay. A test is defined as anything that the person will do. An EMG is a test, and neuro ultrasound is a test, evoked potential is a test. Kelly comes to this. An ultrasound is a test, and an SSCP is a test, a VP and a buyers count as one test. A VNG is a test. If they did an ANS, autonomic nervous system test, everything is a test. They are producing 2.3 tests per hour. Okay, so they are making $517. They're producing $517 per hour. So this is the individual testing. Okay. Now, there is a second type of testing, and the second type of testing is called the referral testing. What is the referral testing? The individuals from the organization, and it can be anyone, not only a person who's responsible, let's say, to market or the clinical director or whatever, anybody from the organization can go and identify a physician, a podiatrist, a chiro, another PT within our territory, anybody. They can go and identify anybody who hands-on EMG testing will create a relationship with, a business testing relationship. So that person will go, will speak with the doctor. If it's needed for me to intervene, I'll jump in on a Zoom with the doctor or on the phone, or I'll go and instead of giving them the 4.5 hours training, I may do a quick also 1 hour training, and then I put them on the 1 hour live training with them on the computer on EMG and ultrasound, and then I put them on the 4.5 hour. But this person now made that referral, is responsible for maintaining the production of that referral source, that we do the testing in their office, right? So now, this person here, when they have referred that referral source, when on a production day in that referral source's office, there is production of greater than 12 tests, they make $15 per test. When there is a production of less than 8, this person now gets penalized by $15 per test. It is very possible that you may have the same physical therapist doing the testing that day, and they are making an individual bonus, but also they are the people who created that brought on board that referral source. They are also making a referral bonus. Okay? But it is possible now that therapist A works the account and person B has made the referral for the account. So the therapist A is their job to make sure that there will be production that day, and therefore they'll gain their individual bonus, but the person who made the referral will be in communication both with the physician in that office, but also with the therapist who is doing the testing in that office to make sure that there is enough production so both of them can make bonus. This thing here has revolutionized the whole thing. And I'll tell you, we did not put the penalty initially. We only put the reward. And then we came up with the idea of penalty because we saw a little bit of manipulation of the system. And, initially we got a little resistance on the, but the resistance was not, and that was the very welcoming thing. The resistance was not on the concept of the penalty, because people understood we have to make enough money to break even for our expenses, make some profit, and then everybody shares about that. The resistance was on the exact number, okay? And this was initially 10, it became 8, and that's understood. There is a reason in our practice why this became 8. Okay, and the third, there's a question on this.
James, there's a question online. I saw Scott come up with a question.
And let me go to number 3 so I can complete this, and then you ask the questions.
Right.
And the third bonus, it's called the group bonus. So what happens on the group bonus, there is a quota for revenue for the quarter, first, second, third, fourth quarter of the year. Okay? when that quota is such that maintains a pretty decent profitability for the company. I mean, you should be running margins at least 30% on this. We'll talk about that in the afternoon. But when the team reaches the quota, when they reach the quota, there's nothing happening there. But for any amount above the quota, there is a 20% revenue share for the group. So then the group makes then 20% of the revenue generated above the quota.
Questions. One, what if you do tests you know that won't be covered, like workers' comp that does not cover?
I will share with you guys the actual write-up, because there is a policy, a bonus policy. I'll share it with you. I just need to sanitize it a little bit because I have some company-specific information. I have names of some physicians there and all that stuff, so I need to sanitize it a little bit. It is the bonuses and the testing is on insurance qualified insurance qualified patients, qualified insurance testing. So the physical therapists, they have a list of insurances and what test each insurance pays us for. So they work through that list. Now, is it possible that for some other reason that we did not provide them with, we won't get paid? Well, if that happens, they still will get their bonus, and then it's up to us to fix the problem or include it in the list of not do that test for that insurance.
How many hours is a day?
A day is 8 hours. So look at
Treating?
this. So it is an expectation in an 8-hour day, for minimum eight tests to be done, not for a bonus to be earned, for a penalty not to be imposed. So if you multiply 8 by 225, that is about 17, about 18 it is, or 17, what is it? Huh? 418, so it's 1,800 here. So our cost for a therapist per day with equipment, with insurance, with this and that is somewhere near the $800, $900 mark. Then our cost for rental for that day would be anywhere for a production of this level, it would be somewhere around $500. So we would have about $1,300 cost for the day in a very low scenario like this, and $500 profit from that day. So from 8 to 12, there is no bonus given. This is kind of covers your salary and covers the expenses and some profit for the company. And then above that number is where the bonus is being earned.
Is there anything else, James?
Yeah, sure. What is the quarterly quota? Is there a quarterly quota?
That is confidential for the company.
Got it. Okay.
Well, I think what's important to learn from this is that, yeah, you can do this with your diagnostics, but you should be doing these kind of calculations for your PT clinic. What does it take to break even? And you should have some of these numbers pretty detailed and written out, like you figured out, like how much does it cost a day? How much profit are you making per day if you meet the bare minimum quota? Are you making money? And is your profit margin built in, right? So although he's sharing diagnostic specific stuff, it's a worthwhile activity for your PT business as well.
What does your average person that's working outside average, number of tests in a day? Like if you average it out, 8 is low.
Can you rephrase it? Just.
Yeah, what Christina says, she asks, what is the average number of tests a diagnostician will do in a day? They will do in a day somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 to 18 tests. Again,
Which might not be hard if they're doing an EMG and an ultrasound on the same patient.
like 95%, you'll see in the afternoon, one of the biggest problems you guys have is you are not using your ultrasound technology. You are not using it. I know it. I can see it in the numbers. You hardly ever do a your ultrasound. And you're leaving close to $200 revenue on the table right there. You're not doing it. And it only takes you 7 minutes to do it and another 7 minutes to do the report. Literally, you are leaving a lot of money on the table. I'm gonna show it later in the afternoon. Yes, Steve.
For people that don't get reimbursed for ultrasound at bill 97750, can we do that on the same day?
Yes, and so the question was, if let's say for a specific insurance company, the insurance company does not pay you the 76881 code, they don't pay you the 76881, but they pay you the 97750, a couple of units of that, 2, 3 units, whatever of that, then the question is, can I build the 97750 code together with the EMG code the same day? The answer is yes. You can build the EMG code and the 97750 code the same day.
Are they efficient enough that they're actually getting the reports done during their work period, or do they get the reports done, or do they do it after work?
Okay, so the reports. In our organization, the reports are done a little kind of differently in our in-house organization. Okay?
This is the outgo, right?
Well, it doesn't matter, but hands-on EMG has a clinical director. All of the people who do testing, they do the reports, right?
They do.
All of the reports go to the clinical director for inspection. So the clinical director does an inspection for all of the reports. Then these reports go into a they go into a Dropbox, and they get emailed to the physicians or other providers who we do testing for. Now, what I do is I go once every a couple of weeks and I pick out a couple of reports and I look at them just as a random check. Now, some of these people are students of the HUD's residency program or fellowship program. Well, they will submit those reports separately to the mentor. So that program has nothing. I didn't want to mix so much because we are HUDs, we are hands-on EMG. I wanted like a totally independent mentor to get. I don't want the mentor of this student to be biased, and not do their job, the competency job right. So I want this to send to the mentor, who is the outside mentor. This is the HUD's mentor, and the clinical director is only pushing production and checking reports for production.
I was more impressed that they can do the test and do the reports in the time.
They don't. Oh, no, they don't do it. I can tell you that if they do 8, 10 tests, 12 tests for the day, they'll get it done in the same day. The rest they'll have to do it on their own time.
They do.
And they do it on their own time. They have to. But look, they get bonuses. Right. I mean, these people, we pay 26 payrolls a year. right? I mean, every 2 weeks. I can tell you, I mean, in every payroll cycle, we pay like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in every payroll cycle in bonuses. So they make good bonuses, these people. Yeah.
There's a question I think you might have, actually, one just came in too, so there's two real quick. You might have answered this one already. What if someone only does MSK US? You don't average 225 per test. So if someone does 15 MSKs, you would lose money. Or does this not happen?
Okay, that is interesting. We do not engage into, let me rephrase this. The same way we will not accept someone to come to HUDS and say, hey, hi, I want to join HUDS, but the only thing I want to do is ultrasounds, or the only thing I want to do is EMGs, nothing else. That is not a candidate for HUDS, because HUDS has a model. What is the model? The model is something that was created by Costa and myself, creating that operation that had a success. So that is the model. The model is do that plus that plus that plus that in a specific way. So if you deviate from that model, you're not going to have, you cannot use the same benchmarks for a different model. You follow me? So I would not accept to go to a physician's or some office to engage in a relationship if that physician wants to do only ultrasound. I would accept them perhaps in a daily rate. I would say, sure, I'll come to your office, I'll do the ultrasounds, you bill for them, but I want $1,500 a day, $2,000 a day as a flat rate. And I'll do as many tests as I can do in the whole day. Maybe I'll do, I don't know, 20 ultrasounds or something in a day. But the idea is that you cannot engage into situations or relationships that they will do only one test. Meanwhile, you're paying the therapist so much money for the whole day. It's different what Bart described in his practice. That's a totally different viewpoint there. That is like in our practice, Michael is a physical therapist. He's working 40 hours a week. And in his schedule, he plugs in 5, 6, 7 MSK ultrasounds per week. But this guy is not working for the diagnostic company. He's working for the PT company as an add-on, as an adjunct thing. He does the ultrasound. What I'm talking about here is I'm talking about people who are doing at least 2, 3 dedicated days a week diagnostics. I'm talking about the company that is a diagnostic company and is operating as a diagnostic company. As a matter of fact, outside of those 1, 2 people who do some ultrasounds in our office, our physical therapy clinic is viewed as an outside business for our diagnostic company. So there are 2 dedicated days a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, that diagnostic testing is taking place in Astoria. So the diagnostic company goes every Tuesday and Thursday to that physical therapy location and delivers diagnostic testing.
Well, just thinking now,
We have about 5 minutes before we break for lunch. So.
I need only 20, don't worry. Interesting enough, we have established a bonus system in our clinic for therapists to refer for ultrasound towards our company. So there is a $15 for an ultrasound and I think $20 or something for an EMG. Now that's interesting because you had different responses to that bonus. Some therapists, they don't want to do that. They think it's not ethical enough, right? And that's true. So my job is to remind them that nobody gets tested if they don't need it. But at the same time, if they need tests because they have symptoms, why are you going to deprive them for that? So there is that balance that we try to maintain in that level.
That have been referred for EMG and reproduction study, that then you do the neuro MSK and it's like you've added an additional test that wasn't ordered by the physician and or issues with reimbursement from
Yeah, we, on the side of reimbursement, quite frankly, in our area, except of one insurance company that requires additional authorization, we don't have a problem with, if we get paid for the EMG, we'll definitely get paid for the ultrasound. Now, if a patient comes into the office referred for an EMG, they're referred for an electrodiagnostic session. The electrodiagnostic session to make a full conclusion, and as per guidance by the American Academy of Neuromuscular and Electrodiagnostic Medicine, AANEM, is very, very frequently guided also with the addition of neuro ultrasound. So it's.
I think it can be backed up by data that is appropriate.
Is correct doing now?
Because we have to lunch. Were there any other questions for the expert panel? Yes.
So, Jimmy, like, how many, I guess, practices that have gone through HOD's program are actually doing what you guys are doing there, where they've got just PTs going out and doing diagnostics?
There are, I would say, very few that they have exclusive teams of people or exclusive therapists who will do diagnostics. And I will tell you that as HUDs, we are taking full responsibility for that. And I believe that the root of that problem is on the misduplication of the concept that the diagnostic business has to be and develop as a totally separate entity, as a totally separate business, where you give to it its own importance and you do the right steps to expand that as a business, not just as a little niche next to your physical therapy business. So, and this is why there is a very concerted effort now with the branding of the diagnostic business, the grand opening of the diagnostic business, the events of the diagnostic business to fully develop that HUD's approved ideal diagnostic center that does all this stuff and develops as a completely separate entity that offers the value, a tremendous value to you as a franchisee.
So in the businesses, you have PTs that do just diagnostics. Is there, I know beside the bonuses, is their salary structure different to the regular PTs?
So yeah, I'll answer that. We pay some more money for PTs. Starting salary for a PT who goes to do exclusive diagnostics, starting salary, if they are right out of school, is $80,000 to $85,000 we pay. Once somebody becomes board certified, their ECS certification, regardless of the position they have in the organization, that is with benefits, Scott, yes, plus benefits. Yeah, I see Scott. Okay, man, good to see you. I hope your quarantine is going well there. Once they get their board certification, they jump to $105,000. Now, I'll tell you, in our physical therapy practice, the only person we pay more than $100,000 is, oh, you want to answer? Go ahead. That's it. Yeah. Yeah, Costas is the only one making more than 100. I make about $65,000 a year. Yeah, no. All right. So $105,000 a year they get, but the only our clinical director in the PT practice makes more than $100,000. The rest of the PTs make 100 or less than 100 in the regular PT practice, even if they have so many years of experience, you know?
You're saying this includes benefits, not plus benefits,
Oh, no, plus benefits
on top of this.
on top of this. And plus bonus. Plus bonuses, yeah. Yeah. No, we pay them pretty well. But look, here is the point, Janine. Think about this, right? If in your diagnostic business, you are doing, let's say, minimum of 8 tests and you average 225, you have $1,800 revenue, your cost of that, even if you pay, let's say you paid the maximum, which is $105,000, your cost is $50 per hour and a little bit more, let's say, for Social Security tax, 9%, whatever that is. So you're talking about maybe $500 would be your cost for personnel that day. Then you have equipment costs, let's say insurance, blah, 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 whatever, another what? $250 with supplies, maybe $300. You're gonna pay rent in that location for that low production, about $500 rent. Where are you at? At $1,300. Still, you made $500 profit here. $500 profit on this is about 28%.
Any other questions? Well, first of all, thank you for the expert panel for taking the time to sit up here and answer the questions. Before we break to lunch, anyone have some like sparks, any ideas that they want to share that they got from this morning and hearing from the expert panel, and inspirations?
I think one comment from online that there's one comment that there's about 12 people here, and one for one, the comment about having it as a separate, they hadn't been looking at it or planning for diagnostics as a separate entity. It was very much like you opened, I think, Jimmy, with, where it's all just like, well, we do eSTEM and diagnostic testing and ultrasound, you know. So a lot of comments about how they're shifting their viewpoint on that, shifting their model. I'm going to start neuro MSK, Eddie Sinclair now, and you know, and he's got some points to that. So it's good. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, anyone else want to share? Yeah.
I just want to say, like, over the past day and a half, I just feel like this whole renewed sense of purpose as to getting back on track as to why we're doing this. You know, we're really setting ourselves apart for the care that we can provide our patients, and really setting ourselves apart as far as pushing the profession, you know, to be professional and autonomous. And I think it's just, I'm going back with like a whole, again, mindset of how I'm gonna promote all this. So I think it's great.
I have something real quick, is that it's been good. I was kind of getting in confusion earlier when we started, because I'm in the process, we just started pods from COVID, and so, you know, that created confusion in our life in general, so I'm trying to pull myself out of that. But I was hearing these setups, and then I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, that is not what I heard yesterday about setting up, you know, your practice. And I know there's a lot of different ways, like Bart is very advanced in this. He's been doing this for a while. But I think that as a clinician, and you get into the training and learning as a therapist, that I started to go in the clinical route, right? Where I wasn't really acting as an owner of a business, of setting up the business. Now, over this year, I've kind of changed that because I couldn't do anything clinically. So I said, okay, I'm going to redirect myself to getting ready for whenever time is ready. So I think that one of the things in the future that could be done, or even a module to enforce maybe for the owners, is you have to go through that process of setting up that business model, and you have to do that. And that would separate my mindset as an owner that I have to do this, as well as if I'm possibly a clinician. So that would, I'm putting myself in those boxes and changing those hats, because I was kind of getting that crossed up. So I appreciate the clarity.
You know, Denise, I just want to say, that's what we're hitting on right after lunch. So my whole presentation is going to be focused in on profitability in your HODS business and how the structure of that is what dictates that. So I love that you shared that. That was a great segue to what we're going to be doing this afternoon, which before we go into any other shares, what time is lunch? What time are we supposed to start after lunch? So 1 o'clock? I'm starting right at 1 o'clock. Like on dot. So if you guys want to be a part, I want to create as much value as possible for everyone here. So I will be on time, and I want you guys to just, if you want to honor that, to be here as well. And just be prepared to come to work. I want you to be thinking over lunch around what it is in your business that you would like to see differently in your HODS business, especially around profitability. Like, and maybe if you're clear that it's not as profitable as you'd like it to be, what are some of the barriers that you're experiencing around that? And then we'll jump right into that.
Can I ask a question? A quick question. Okay, so
Make it quick because we're going to lunch.
very quick question. You guys, from what you said already, you are seeing some value on what you got. All right, I have a question for you. Would you like our colleagues who are not here right now to get the same value that you got?
Yeah.
Yes? Is that a yes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. So there is a way to try to do that. And the way is for you, in your own words, maybe with a quick testimonial that Nelly can get during lunch or when we finish, or you getting in front of your phone and say a few words about the value you are getting from this and how great it is. So we can use these quick testimonials next year when we do next year's leadership to get this room full of people, okay?